Today on STEMsational, I'll be speaking with Evelyne van Vosselen. Evelyne is the HR Director for Bridgestone EMEA. Thanks, Evelyne, for joining us. So what are some interesting projects that you get to work on as a HR Director?
A lot, actually. I think when we look at the sort of journey I've been through, both inside and outside of Bridgestone, I think my focus lies in all the softer areas, although they can be quite hard. So there's performance management, which I'm in the process of bringing up to the next level at Bridgestone. So where we go from a very traditional mid-year, year-end review process to more flexibility, more agility, by introducing what is officially called continuous performance management, but is really continuous feedback, and build that in as an opportunity into the system. Mm-hmm. In the talent management space, I had the pleasure of setting up that entire process and the philosophy and the supporting system. It's really great because you can really dive into the human side and the talent side of running a business in an organization, mm-hmm. and look at how people actually really make the difference when you want to implement and execute a strategy. And the people that you select and support as key talents in an organization and may at some point in time take on a real critical role to maybe redetermine that strategy will impact the success and the livelihood of that company, right? Mm-hmm. And that is so fascinating to do. And I think what I get a lot of satisfaction from is also to be able to see how what we do can help people in teams and organizations to really progress, and in such a way that it's tangible and measurable. Right now, I think we have a very different mission, not different, but a mission that we've added to our work, which is to build toolkits and enablers for people to work through the pandemic. So under the label of #resilience, we mm-hmm. have 4 pillars. Workplace tools, which could be our processes, mental health, physical health, and social connectivity, which for me is a key one. So it's all fun as well, and a lot of work.
Yeah, perfect.
There's tons more, right? I think learning is also a passion, and we've introduced in September 19 a huge collection of e-learning modules where we bought a catalogue of 16,000 modules, and our learning numbers increase week after week after week, and people just really enjoy and take a benefit from it. So I get passionate about that.
And is this also developing people on their technical capabilities, or are you looking at sort of management and leadership as well?
So today, my area at Bridgestone is much less the functional technical space when it comes to, when I think about the plants, for instance, and all our colleagues there, I'm not involved in training. I touch it a little bit because we try to get all of our blue collar colleagues onto our system so that we can support how training is being managed for them. And so that they could also take the benefit of doing online learning, which today they can't really access or not that easily. So we're beginning to see experiments across the different plants where we are beginning to offer online training to our colleagues there. So definitely, I think that is an important element. My focus is mainly, yes, definitely on leadership, but also I want to make sure that we cater to the needs of of a population that is as broad as possible. So we do offer a wide range of soft skill offerings, personal development offerings, that can really meet the needs of, the first level entry person that joins us to the most seasoned leader across the organization. Quite exciting, actually.
Good. So, as we previously discussed as well, diversity and inclusion are now these mega buzzwords that everyone's on everyone's lips. But what do they mean to you? And not only what do they mean to you as a female professional, but also a HR professional as well?
Yes, that's a really interesting question. It's a double question. Let me start with maybe myself and my own experience. My mom, is an amazing lady, she was young in the 1960s, right? And she was, I would call her a bit of a feminist. And so when I grew up and then became a teenager, I got a bit of an aversion against the concept of feminism. And I didn't give it much thought until at a certain point in my career, I discovered that when I had changed jobs, the person who'd replaced me, for no particular reason, had a 50% salary increase versus the salary that I had to do the same work. And I was actually more qualified than the guy. And that's when I began to realize, oh, I probably had a very sheltered life until then. Great upbringing, great parents, a lot of theoretical discussions. But that's when it hit me that there really are differences. And I think another moment, not much later actually, when you are being confronted to some type of form of I would call it harassment and inappropriate behavior, when you begin to realize, yes, I may have had a very sheltered life. And that has certainly, for me, opened up my eyes a lot more and made me realize, wow, we should do something about this. And I've been trying, with more or less in varying degrees of success to really factor that into what I do on a day-to-day basis. I've been very fortunate in my career to experience different approaches, different types of cultures, and to be able to really look at what initiatives could have as an impact. My first experience was a long time ago with Dell, where we launched a program specifically targeting our women population across the organization. Now with hindsight, I would call it to build resilience with them, to acknowledge that things aren't always right, to make it possible to discuss that as well. It was labeled a type of communication course for women, but really the core was, let's have that discussion. Let's be open about it, and let's understand that I may not have experienced it, you may not have experienced it, but it doesn't mean that there are no issues, right? And that was very rewarding. It was also very eye-opening to some, but it was also great to be able to see the leadership that some of our women could take during those sessions and then afterwards as well, because they felt strengthened by the fact that they realized, my God, I'm not alone. Some of them realized they could be a role model, and how impactful and significant that was to younger colleagues across the organization. So definitely that was a very, very powerful program. I know that years later, after I left, I thought it was very interesting to see that Dell had continued on that journey, but also started offering small workshop type sessions for the men in the organization, because I think it's great, we kind of work on awareness with women and tell them, no, it's not okay, and you need to learn to have a voice and not be afraid, and look at each other as well for support and help. But we're not alone in this world, right? And I think we all need to go through this together. So it's really important that that awareness grows across, both genders, if you like. So that I think was really important and eye-opening. And I think if we wonder, well, how is it possible actually that in 2020 we still have these questions? We still struggle with the same.
Who knows, Evelyne? That's why we're talking now. Who knows?
So when I think of it, and when I relate to the job I'm in, I think I've been working a lot around culture. And when we look at organizational culture, we see that culture is very hard to change. It's very pervasive, it's shared, it's not very obviously visible because it sits and hides in all our default behaviors and ways of doing things. And it sometimes takes us by surprise when we meet other cultures, whether they're work cultures or ethnic cultures or whatever, when we realize, oh my God, what I just take for granted and never question might be different somewhere else. And I think for me, that's certainly one of the areas where I want to focus on, is how can we understand that we're in a culture, that culture determines how we behave, what we tolerate, what we don't tolerate, and that we're full of biases, right? I'm not finger pointing, I'm full of biases, we're all full of biases. It helps us go through life, but definitely I think there must be an element there that can help us reinforce how we drive that change. It's just that I think we need to do it on a much broader scale than one company at a time. But we have to do the companies as well, right? Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this to say, let's not do anything and wait until we have a global approach to gender diversity.
One day.
One day, but not now, right? No. I think what you said when you know, as part of the introduction, it's diversity and inclusion, and I just wanted to highlight that for me, diversity is important, but inclusion as well, right? And for you can't have one without the other. And so I think those are two very clear elements to also focus on and factor in. We can understand that there's differences, and I see that sometimes happen in organizations, also outside of my own current organization or in non-corporate organizations, where we see that notion of diversity is there, but the inclusion part is missing. And that I think is really interesting and is a huge missed opportunity, I think. Gender diversity, which is a focus in Western Europe, but all sorts of diversity. We shouldn't limit ourselves.
And I think another buzzword is equality, which is sort of included in diversity and inclusion. I've got quite a pushing question. So women, we're striving for equality, which is nothing more than being equal. We don't want special treatment. I think we've made that quite clear. However, do you sometimes think that, yes, we can tell women to speak up in the workplace, women to be stronger, we can educate men, or let's say any of the other 50% of the population on, okay, this is how we should be treating people in the workplace. But do you then think that silos women into having special treatment? Like, do these education programs work?
It's a great question, right? I'm in two minds about that. First of all, let me talk about equality, and it might be in the wording and in the semantics. I always shiver a little bit when I hear the word equal. We're not equal. Let's face it. Right? I'm not a guy. You're not a guy. My son is not a girl. No. And I think it's important to acknowledge that there are differences, but that's where the inclusive part comes in. But where we say, but we accept those differences. And does that mean that sometimes the treatment is different? Yes. But it has to be from an employer's perspective that, you know, how we behave towards our employees and our colleagues needs to be equitable, right? So it shouldn't be one-on-one similar, because it's not. And let's face it, I hate to say this, but I'm separated now. But even before, I was still doing a lot of the household work, right? I would do the laundry and I would do so does that impact how I organize myself in my work life and my work-life balance? Yes, it does. We can, you know, for the moment, I don't see how equal can work, and I wouldn't want it to be equal. With regards to the second part of your question, and do these programs work? I definitely think there's a benefit. I can see, depending on how you think programs and approaches through, they definitely have a positive impact and probably have helped the gender diversity move the needle forward, okay? Because there is some progress. We have to be honest, there definitely is some progress. We're not there yet, but there is progress. And I think that's thanks to those programs, whether they are in corporations or outside of corporations. I think they do matter because they continue to build that awareness. And awareness is one of the first drivers to change behaviors. If we're not aware of, you know, something we might do that is between brackets wrong, we won't change it, right? So we need to have the guts to, you know, take a magnifying lens and look at that. What is not working? And I think those programs certainly help. I think they also help because, again, the awareness is still so low. We often think that we're alone, whether we're having that experience as a woman or sometimes as an HR person in an organization. It's so comforting to know that you're not alone, and it gives you a sort of I'm looking for the word. It validates, and it helps you feel entitled to speak up and to say something about it, if that makes sense. So that, I think, is a distinct benefit of the programs. Another benefit I think is not only that it builds confidence in women, that it opens eyes of some of the male colleagues across an organization. I think it also showcases the great benefits and the assets that women bring to an organization, which are sometimes invisible. When I was working for one of my previous companies, we launched a women leader development program with CCL, which was awesome. And I have to say, the first cohort of women that we put through that program, when we invited them, it was almost like they freaked out. It was like, why me? Do I need fixing? What's happening? So the lesson there is that it's really important to be very clear in your communication and position what it is that you're trying to do, right? We're not trying to fix women because they're women, right? We're trying to create awareness to build a platform where they can showcase their skills, their creativity, and really the big assets that they are to an organization. In turn, it helps us as an organization to build a network, to build a sort of internal, more informal organization of women that help each other. And through that work and collaboration and networking, they actually add value to the organization. It's like a cross fertilization, really.
Yeah.
And that has been really important. And then at the end of the program, when that first group of women had finished it, they were over the moon. They really loved it because we didn't patronize them. We treated them as real business leaders. We gave them an opportunity to work on really meaty projects, but at the same time, we integrated some of those elements that would help them and support them as women leaders, and also towards the outside world. Outside world in two levels inside the company. And that program was then later on adopted across the different SBUs across the globe, but also towards the outside world, because this program had quite some press. And I think that's important as well to, again, continue to build that awareness. It may sound a bit crazy in times of Me Too, where maybe people think, oh, there's been too much awareness already around the women cause or whatever you want to call it. But I don't think that we've done enough yet, and that we've communicated enough yet and created enough awareness.
And how important, again, coming from a female professional perspective and also HR perspective, how important is it to have to have feet? Let me start that question again. I couldn't get it out. I was like, ugh. How? God, I can't do this. Give me 1 second. Yes. So, as a HR professional and a female professional, how important is it to have women being seen in these leadership positions?
It's essential. It's essential. And I think not because I say so, or not, people might suspect me of having a soft spot and some favoritism towards women. No, it's not true. There's data that shows and underlines this importance. So I'm just surprised that CEOs and boards and leadership teams haven't picked up more on this, because when we look at the data, for every 10% increase toward the 50-50 gender parity, there's a 1% revenue increase. Other data, diverse companies are 3 times more likely to retain millennials, for instance, for more than 5 years. Companies that embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion are 8 times more likely to achieve better business outcomes. Or the companies in the top quartile for gender diversity are 21% more likely to outperform on profitability. So for me, and based on the data and my own experience, is that diversity, and again, maybe a bit more broadly than just gender diversity, but really fosters creativity and innovation in the workplace. And I think it's exactly because we are not equal. And because you have, it's from that exchange of different minds, different perspectives, different ways of looking at the world and how we do things, that great ideas are born. I'll give an example from the automotive industry, and it's a company I haven't worked for, so it's not like I'm trying to promote any kind of brand, but I want to call this one out, and it's Volvo. And I think when you drive a Volvo, I've had a couple of Volvos in the past years. When you drive one and you sit inside a Volvo car, you can tell that a woman has been part of the design team because of the way in which they design the inside of the car. right? All these men designers, they never think of women, or often not, and that might be changing, but they rarely think of women as drivers, right? My ex-partner didn't drive. I have always been the driver in the household.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, it's important to know, where can I put my handbag? Where can I put my sunglasses? Do I have a mirror as well, or only on the passenger side? And you can feel that difference. And I think, I don't know if there's any data around that, but I'm sure and I'm convinced that that has been a unique selling point to sell more Volvo cars, right? It's probably not for nothing that we talk about Volvo moms, to pick up the kids. So definitely there's added value in having a more balanced and equal spread. And I like to think, not because of the fact that they're women, but because there's different perspectives that need to sit at the table, right? Just as I think that it's also good, I work for a Japanese company today. I would probably be horrified if I thought that my entire management board were Japanese people, because that's a one way, that's one way of thinking about certain topics, right? And I think the beauty lies in that exchange and diverse perspectives.
Okay. So, and a lot of the people that you will be hiring into Bridgestone and the people that you are responsible for are those that have been educated in STEM fields, which is of course a topic we wanted to discuss. How are you driving sort of recruitment for these positions in Bridgestone to be as diverse as possible? So for example, we do know that sometimes language in job descriptions can sometimes be changed to be more appealing to females, and the psychology behind that. But is there anything that Bridgestone is doing to make sure that they're appealing to as much of that community as possible?
So today, if I'm honest, we're not doing enough. Our numbers aren't glorious. The automotive industry as a whole isn't a great, warm, welcoming nest for women. I think it's both internally within organizations in the automotive industry, as well as probably women having less drive towards organizations like mine. Now, of course, when you have a STEM background, you might be more interested, right? For us, it's still an open field. In my past, I have worked with different approaches. In one company, for instance, we hired one particular headhunter to only bring women talent when we were hiring across the top levels of the organization, just to make sure that we always had that inclusive element. Now, I realize that we still have quite a lot of opportunity ahead of us. Definitely, it is on the radar, and it is more and more on the radar. So different elements are being explored. I have to say, this year has been a pivotal year for us, in a sense that as a global corporation, we really want to drive the sustainability agenda. That is first and foremost. And the great thing is that sustainability for us is not just our natural resources and the environment, but it's much broader. So this has created an opportunity to kick off a work group that I'm currently heading up with our head of CSR, which is going to work for our region on what we call a key opportunity area of our people in society. And definitely the diversity and inclusion piece there is a very important one. So we're beginning to make plans for the future. I don't want to divulge too much. Maybe we
can't give away all of Bridgestone's secrets. So we'll both get in trouble for that one.
And some of these plans I probably need to discuss a little bit more internally. But definitely it is more and more on our radar. It is an element we're sensitive to. We've been fortunate to hire some really brilliant analyst minds. And they have helped us to really also look at the data that we currently have and to sort of assess what is our current situation. Now, when we look across the board in the entire organization, it's not brilliant when we look at the gender diversity numbers. But bear in mind that we do have 17 plants as well within, that's about 2/3 of our population across the region. And that's a whole other world, right? To go and manufacture tires and to sit in that smell and do a lot of manual labor. Although I'm very proud to say that one of our plants is headed up by a woman plant manager. I'm
Nice.
so proud of that. She's amazing. In Hungary, which is also, quite a direct culture. So she's doing an awesome job. But today we don't have any specific actions to drive diversity in the more digital and R&D space, where we're looking at with the STEM background. Definitely, it's something we want to look at moving forward. Today, we're trying to focus on who applies, just like that, and without indeed bearing in mind how do we look at job descriptions, what do the job descriptions say about our organization, and how appealing would they be to women candidates. So definitely all of that will be under review for next year and beyond. So maybe 18 months from now we need to have a follow-up chat.
For sure, I'd be happy to have you back. We might be in a series 2 by then, hopefully. So we'll keep the fingers crossed.
It would be great to share some of the plans that we will have put in place by then and how they pan out.
Yeah, we'll do a like a follow-up.
Yes.
So, and Evelyne, as you mentioned, you worked in a wide range of industries and have now gone into the automotive industry. And I'm sure, as you know, there are some misconceptions around the automotive industry. There's also, we sometimes hear from women, it's not the most, as you said, welcoming environment. But how does it compare to the other industries that you've had an opportunity to work in?
To be honest, personally, I don't see huge differences personally, okay? Except that there's less women. Although I want to mitigate that a little bit, because I'm based in headquarters and you have much more women in headquarters than in some of the other locations. So that changes the perspective. And I think in HQ and in many of our major hubs, the diversity percentages are much closer and much better than if we look at it on a more holistic level. So for me, that hasn't changed much. I think I've been privileged, right, in a sense that even when my partner and I were still together, but he was a musician, so I had full flexibility and freedom to drive my career the way I wanted to. I do realize though that that's not the case for everyone, and he was great at being a stay-at-home dad when I had long working days and lots of travel. So, and I think that's another element that is just as important as the organization you work for. In my very first days of my career, there actually seemed to be a benefit to being, one of the few women in a more male-dominated organization. I remember when I was working for Dell, there weren't that many sales managers at Dell that were women back then. And there were some benefits to that. You could see some eyebrows being raised with some customers when you got there for the first time. But very soon that actually became an advantage and a benefit. And I think mostly because we bring a different perspective often, and the customer focus that we might put into our work. I haven't seen a huge striking difference across the different industries that I've worked for, whether they were IT and tech or hospitality or more engineering manufacturing companies. I think what is important though, again, I think I've been privileged. I've always continued to be myself throughout all of these experiences. I do see though that some women tend to try to mold themselves towards a culture. I don't know if that makes sense, but they try to adapt, and maybe they try to come across as a bit more masculine, and I think that backfires. And I think it's really important and essential for us to stay close to ourselves. Whether we're men or women, doesn't matter really. I think it's really important to be able to stay close to yourself, to your own values of what is right and wrong, and what is acceptable and not acceptable. And when I look at the world of work, I do see that there's an evolution there as well. I think people are more emancipated, if that makes sense. Younger people, definitely newer generations, speak up much more, maybe because they were brought up with so many communication tools.
For sure, yes.
It has an impact on how you think and how you look at the world as well. Do I think necessarily that they're different than we were? No, I just think the context changes how you respond to it. And much more is now. So that is certainly, I think, a really important element, is to stay as close as possible to your values and not accept the negative elements that might come across your path, right? If there is, if colleagues say things that make you feel uncomfortable, you should be able to call it out. And that is also, I think, across all of the organizations I've worked for, something that many of the big corporations really diligently put in place. There are opportunities and possibilities for people to raise concerns and issues, whether they are within that gender space and the whole potential friction between men and women on the work floor, or whether they're from a different nature. And I think that is good. Probably they're still a bit too underutilized. Maybe people should feel a little bit more comfortable to flag their issues. And that's where we still have that same mission of creating awareness and telling people it's fine to speak up. It's important to speak up.
And so just on that point, you said about flagging issues. Now, if you're, I would say typically, if you are a female working in a male-dominated space, sometimes that may be a difficult conversation to have if you do feel like you are not being treated equally, or maybe you do feel like you're being suppressed because of your gender. I know that as soon as you do bring that card, it's an immediate, no, we never do that. And yeah, you are. But how would you advise women to start that conversation, or even raise that issue with their boss?
It's not easy, because people always are concerned that it will be turned against them. So first of all, I think a lot of organizations do a great job of offering ways to flag issues, have non-retaliation clauses attached to that, and provide different alleys for people to flag those issues, whether they are anonymous phone calls where, you know, if there needs to be some kind of inquest, of course you can't do it anonymously anymore, but where people are protected and should feel safe to speak up. That doesn't always help us to take that step, right? I think it's important, if you do have an issue and maybe your company doesn't have this type of helpline, whether that's via email or the phone, or there's a couple of options. You could talk to your manager, but we know that not everyone has a great relationship with their manager. You can talk to an HR person. They should be sensitive to this, but you might not feel comfortable doing that either. So try to look for somebody who could be a bit of a mentor in this space to help you. It could be another woman leader. It does not have to be your leader, your HR business partner, but really think about take a half step back and think, who in this organization could potentially support what I'm saying, and who do I feel comfortable talking to or talking with to flag that. And it might be easier with another woman leader in your organization, who may be able to give you advice and also look back on her own experience, because again, it's surprising, but it really happens to all of us. When the first time that my boss actually back then was misbehaving, we'll say, I was terrified, like, what do I do with it? Fortunately, I could avoid the question of what do I do with it, because he was leaving the company. So I didn't have to face him much longer. So that was a relief for me, because it is a struggle. So it requires work on yourself to take that step, a bit of faith. But also I think an additional motivator should be, I'm doing this for me, but I'm also doing this for everyone else, right? Whether they're women or not. But there's no easy answer and no easy solution. But look for those avenues. Your manager, your HR business partner, whatever helpline the organization may have set up, or another woman leader who can be a mentor in this case and help you with that. Worst case scenarios, there's always external services as well, but then it's really serious, and you have to always also consider the balance of what you're saying and what you're doing.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not easy. Yeah.
And so just going back to yourself a bit. So as we've previously discussed, you've worked through a range of industries. What actually attracted you to the automotive industry and Bridgestone?
For me, there's a couple of personal elements. First of all, I'm not about driving. I love driving. I ride a motorcycle. I actually had my motorcycle license 7 years before my car driver's license.
Nice.
Give me wheels and I'm happy, right?
Are we talking
really
about
am.
like Harley Davidson? Are we a more functional Suzuki? What motorbike are we talking about?
When I was younger, Kawasaki ZXR, which is more of a racing engine.
Yeah.
I've cooled down a bit, but still Kawasaki, although I might go to Triumph or something a bit more appropriate for my age, I would say. But so yeah, so I like wheels. So anything in automotive definitely, would be interesting to me. I've experienced throughout my career that I seem to fit in culturally with engineering and manufacturing companies, and I also feel that I can, bring experience and really help them progress.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great to feel that you can add value. I think it gives a sense of purpose, but also the role in itself is very appealing. So when I think about jobs for myself, I look at not so much the industry, but I look at the organization and the level of maturity of the organization to really determine how much value can I add. And it doesn't have to be low maturity or high maturity, but just what are the opportunities for me to work on? And it's really, that is the main driver. The benefit of being in HR is that, especially in my area, 80% of my experience is transferable and industry neutral. It doesn't matter. You can set up learning tracks for people in automotive, in IT, in hospitals. The principles are all the same. The beauty is that every time it's slightly different, so you learn a lot from that, from going through all of these different experiences and industries. Which is, again, how do you broaden your mind, the mind of an organization? How do you bring a more diverse perspective into it? That's what attracts me more than anything else. I have never stopped to think, whoa, it's more men than women. Although when I joined Bridgestone and I had my first formal announcement with the top leader group, and some of us were in Brussels in HQ.
Yeah.
When I looked at the group, there were 2 women, and it was back then my boss and me, and it was like, okay, that's interesting.
Hello, fellow.
Hi guys. Yes, it was a bit of exceptional, but so that was interesting because I'd never seen it that visually. We do have a lot of women leaders, by the way. Not enough to my liking, but it's not as bad as it may appear now. But so that would not be a driver. I really look at the culture, how open they are to try out new things, how ready they are to progress, and less, is it a male dominated? And maybe again, that's my upbringing. 2 brothers, motorcycles and all of that. I've been one of the boys more than anything else.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. And so what is Bridgestone actively doing at the moment to start promoting diversity and inclusion?
So again, we've set up this what we call KOA 10, so the key opportunity area work group around our society and our people, and they're one of the concrete pillars that we're launching as of next year is around diversity and inclusion, right? On a global level, we have started a people working group across all of the different SBUs to focus on people. And there too, definitely I want to bring more focus on the diversity agenda. It's a little different because it's such a mixed group. But definitely for EMIA, we're going to set the pace and be leaders in the diversity and inclusion space. So we're in the process of designing and creating a lot of initiatives and activities ranging from reviewing job descriptions, as you mentioned earlier, setting up ERGs. ERG is short for Employee Resource Group, because I do not have a huge team of 150 people that can actually do and implement work.
Yeah.
But definitely it's one of my key objectives. We're starting next year, and we're now in a preparation phase.
Yeah. Okay.
I think to be honest, and just as a side note, I think the pandemic has actually been very useful from that perspective. Mid-March, all of a sudden, all of our white collar workers were confined to their houses. I think it's still a struggle for women, but then it's inside the house where you have to work and you look after the kids while your husband is doing conference calls in that office, but you have conference calls as well. That's a slightly different battle, but definitely I think that has helped me to create a EMEA-wide smart working policy, where we will now formally allow people to work 3 days from home moving forward after the pandemic, and where we're introducing flexible working hours. And definitely for me, that is a great plus with regards to integrating more gender diversity in the organization, which was something that was still quite hard. Again, culturally, Japanese organization, always male dominated. There wasn't a lot of sensitivity. And now we have discovered actually this works for us. People maybe work harder even than before. And we found ways to motivate and engage our employees across the region to stay very engaged. We've upped our transparency in our communication. Again, there's that whole work around the 4 pillars of mental, physical well-being, work tools, and the social connectivity that I think are really perfect foundations to embrace a better gender diversity balance.
Yeah, and I definitely think, well, for me personally as well, when companies like working from home doesn't work, and then we're in a pandemic, everyone has to work from home, and by gone, it works. So I think these being put in place, especially for women in STEM careers who are deterred from doing these kind of jobs because there is no work-life balance. Suddenly, there is this opportunity to work from home, but I think it will work as long as companies then don't slyly discourage them from using that time. I think that's when we'll start having problems.
Yeah. And I think it's important there that we all role model the right behavior. So I have, of course, we have a third lady that joined the team just now in November 1st. My 2 other co-workers in my team are young mothers with kids. Like one of them has 3, aged 2 and 6 and 10, something like that, and the other one has a 5-year-old. So definitely we're role modeling ourselves as well, that level of flexibility during the pandemic, where yes, I know, if your 2-year-old is sick, you want to be able to spend an hour or 2 at the beginning of the afternoon to make sure he gets to sleep and gets looked after, and that's fine, right? What I'm doing to support that flexibility and to support also the gender diversity is that as of next year, I want to introduce a different way of goal setting for the organization, which is less focusing on, I need to see what you're doing and I need to see you sit behind your laptop from 9 to 5, but where we really want to focus on what is the ultimate deliverable and the outcome. So focus much more on outcomes-based performance management versus you have KPIs and I need to see how many hours you've been working on achieving them. Yeah. And we've just agreed with our top 130 leaders that we were going to go for that approach and do a soft launch next year. So I think that's a great achievement already, and should help us remove some levels of stress. When we went into the lockdown, my Polish coworker was terrified. When you have Teams on your laptop, there's this little dot that shows whether you're active or in a meeting or in Do Not Disturb. When you don't use Teams for a certain amount of time, it goes to yellow as if you've been away. And she noticed that like in the first 1 or 2 weeks, and she was terrified. She thought, oh my God, Evelyne is going to think that I'm not working. And it had never ever crossed my mind, right? So I think we all need to sort of come to terms with the fact that, let's focus on the outcomes. Let's not worry about the path towards that outcome. But you manage and call me if you need my help to progress. But I think that's important. And I'm really hoping that that new approach on goal setting is going to help us change the culture slowly, but certainly.
We'll get there for sure, Evelyne. Now, I know as well that you were slightly pushed for time, so I don't want to keep you before your next call. So what we'll do, this is just to finish things off with. So it's a game. And what I'm going to do is at the end of the series, see who has won the game. I don't know, we might sort you out Connecting Experts prize. Don't know what it is yet, but we'll work it out. So what I'm going to do is say letters of the alphabet and then you have to come back to me with a car brand. But because you're a motorcycle brand, I will include motorcycles for you. The only thing is, I'm not very well acquainted with motorcycle. I shouldn't actually be telling you this because you can cheat now. So you might say a brand and I'll be like, oh, I don't know, but we'll go with it. So starting with A.
Alpha.
Yeah. B.
BMW.
C.
Chrysler.
D.
Daewoo or Daewoo.
I've forgotten the alphabet suddenly. D. Oh, we got D. E. Sorry. It's all right. Well, first time round, you got to D. So you are the winner at the minute with 4 points.
Yay!
I mean, at the minute you're winning. I can't promise at the end of the series, but we'll keep track. And then again at the end, I'll send you a prize if you have won. I'm also trying to think of one with E. Do you know what? I don't think I can think of one either. E-car? No, that's not a brand. That's just a.
No, I'm sure there's. I'm trying to think motorcycles now. Yeah, EZ. EZ is a motorcycle brand. I think they're like from the Czech Republic or something like that. Oh no, it's MZ. No.
I mean, I don't know. Apparently, there's Eagle luxury sedans. I don't know. Oh, Eicher trucks apparently. EICHER is a truck one. I'm not well acquainted with truck brands either. I must be honest. Automotive is about D. I would have gone with Ducati. Ducati?
Oh yeah, Ducati. Yes, awesome.
Is that a dream motorcycle of yours as well?
It is. It always has been on my wish list. Yes.
For sure. Well, Evelyne, thank you so much for your time. And for sure, if I'm ever near you, we'll definitely have to go for a cup of coffee. Pro-caffeinator. I remember now for sure.
Absolutely. I would love to do that. Let me know. Just see me. Great.
Fantastic. Well, I hope the next call goes well. Thank you so much for your time.
Speak to you later.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.